This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it's time for Let's Talk Life with Alicia. And Alicia, you and your guest, the wonderful Janet Galen, met on another podcast of ours. You met on Heart Mojo with Melinda Smith. And people say that during COVID, we're all stuck in the house. We're not meeting anybody. We're not doing anything. And I think that's wrong because the three of us have just become friends in the last couple months.
Yes.
So how does that happen, Alicia?
Well, it happens out of thin air. It's weird. We meet people and then we pick them and say, oh, I want to get to know you. And then you start up dialogues. I think for our generations, and we are two different generations on here right now, this is a whole new world for us digitally, because where did you go and meet people? You met them at dances, you met them in college, you met them, because we didn't have this thing called the internet, thank God. I mean, honestly, my parents never knew what I did.
Well, that's true. Mine didn't either. Yeah.
There's no GPS system, thank God, at that point in time.
What does that mean that they didn't know what you did?
Well, I was at Aunt Kiki's house, maybe.
Yeah. So, like when you went out, Janet, with your girlfriends, did your parents know everywhere you were with your girlfriends?
Absolutely.
Oh,
Janet's a good girl.
Good girl.
What?
You were a very good girl.
I really was, I guess. Sure. I told them, yes.
But I mean, you didn't have a phone. They couldn't call you and say,
Right.
okay.
Right.
So they knew that you were out with your friends. They knew maybe
Yes.
you were going to the movies or whatever, but they couldn't just connect with you immediately.
You're right. And actually, I remember the one time they did not know where I was, and they called the police. Well, it was in high school, and I was doing a lot of modeling during those days. And I had gone with a photographer out to Zuma Beach. And, you know, it was called off, but as long as he was there and I was there and he said, let's just go take pictures anyway. And it was storming. And I never, there was no way to call my parents, but I finally did call them quite late in the afternoon. And it was storming. They were terrified. They knew where we were going, but they were terrified because, you know, the roads were not good. And I called from a payphone, which is, you know, what you got to do. And I called at about 6 o'clock and, you know, hi, it's me. I said, you know, we're just going to go out and get a little bit of dinner and we're free taking. And no, I wasn't. Get home immediately. We have called Arthur, call the police. We found her.
Oh.
And that was the only time, and it terrified them. Yes.
Yeah.
So, like Alicia, if your kids are out, I'm assuming that at least your son has a cell phone, correct?
He now has a cell phone because of the first day of school. So, and that's a whole other thing. I mean, he started middle school. He's 11 years old. I told him he doesn't get a cell phone until he's 16 because you don't need one. I had a car phone when I got my license at 16 and it was installed in the car and it didn't go and so I guess they kind of could call me if they needed to, but it was like for emergencies.
Right.
Well, Max, I told him he is not allowed to cross a major road because I'm letting him walk, getting a little independence, walking to and from school, which is literally a block from my house. So why would he need a cell phone? Well, the first day of school, it wasn't very clear where he was meeting to walk with his friends. He waited a half hour because mommy said, do not cross the street without somebody. Oh yeah. And so he talked to some teacher. I'm proud of my son. He went to the office and I called them later because then they're finally like, you know what, you need to walk home. And he's like, no, my mother told me I can't.
Good for him.
Yeah. Well, he did end up coming, but he was so beside himself. And I called there and said, well, kids have cell phones. We don't let them use the phone. Oh. And I was like, okay. And so I sat up all night going back and forth, and I was like, this is the day and age. Like before, I always have 25 cents on you, because
Right.
that's how much it was to make a phone call.
I think with us, it was a dime.
Yeah, me too.
See, different generations.
Right.
But I mean, and then I went to my parents and said, look, I don't want to do this. I have to do it just in case. And so, yes, now my children have a cell phone, but I don't call them. It's funny. I don't call them. They call me. Mom, I'm leaving school.
You still have to have trustworthy children, cell phone or not, because look at all the what goes on where, you know, kids will say, you know, I'm in the playground at school, and no, they're not. You know, they're at some, you know, with.
I was that kid.
Were you? And so what happened when you got caught?
I didn't get caught.
How stupid of me.
Okay. Except for when I came home really, really drunk. I had drank a fifth all to myself at Jim Beam and was throwing up all over the place. And my dad said, oh my God, you're drunk. I was like, no, I'm not. And my mom, she was like, you smell of bourbon. And I was like, no, I don't. Like, I'm throwing up my guts. And I should have died of alcohol poisoning that night. But no, I mean, I think that I absolutely tested the boundaries. Thank God my son is a rule follower. I really, truly, in my heart of hearts, believe I don't have to worry about that right now because he's 11. And the fact that the boy calls, I don't need GPS on him because he called, hey, Mom, I just got out of school. And then the garage door opens, hey, Mom, I walked in the house. And I know, and I trust him. The second that trust is broken, he's not, you know what? Sorry, I'll pick you up from school.
Oh.
Natural.
So, I mean, we're in society, we are one step away from those ankle bracelets, those locator things.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
You know, yeah, I don't, if I can't trust my kid to walk to school and back,
right,
that's not a him issue, that's a me issue. And so, you know, but hey, I'm also not of my generation. I really believe in some aspects, but I look at parenting very differently. You know, we get his grades all the time.
But it's interesting, Alicia, because when your mom and I both lived in the Detroit area,
right?
We walked to school. We didn't have buses.
Right.
And we walked home from school, and our parents trusted us only because there was no other way. I mean, there were some parents who drove their kids, dropped them off at school, picked them up from school. But a lot of us, we walked. We knew how long it was supposed to take us to get there and how long it was supposed to take us to get home. Mm-hmm. And most of us were good kids, and we followed those rules. Right. But today, the rules are different.
There's also another issue when it comes to our parents trusted us. And
right.
Yeah, so my parents trusted me. I mean, I was a remarkably trustworthy person. And I'm gathering that I know now that you weren't, Alicia, but but you know.
No, I was trustworthy. I think my parents gave me enough rope, truthfully, to hang myself. And they also believed in natural consequences.
Yes.
And so I did learn. I mean, I wasn't a bad kid. I wanted to know where the parameters were, and I was going around them.
Yes. Well, but you know, there was also the issue, and my mother used to say to me, it's not that I don't trust you. I worry about the other guy, in particular when we got our driver's licenses.
Yes.
You know, the other guy on the freeway or the road. And it's terrifying out there, I think, as a parent.
Yes. I think no matter what age, you know, I look at it and my mom worries. She still worries. And she'll be the first. We could call her right now and she'd be like, yes, I'm worried. And that's a constant thing. When I became a mom, I was like, oh, I'm not going to worry. And then I absolutely lost my mind and got the parenting brain.
Right.
But I think I worry less with my son as opposed to my daughter.
Oh, no. Say why?
Because of her personality.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Because you know, my son's like, this is the rules, and my daughter is definitely her mother's child, and she'll be like, you know, Mom, you know, she'll test boundaries, but I think the also thing is because she's 8 and she has a mouth of a 15-year-old and she doesn't understand the difference, which is partly my doing. I don't want her to get in a situation that she can't get herself out of, but I also don't want them to not want to be able to come to me if they get in that situation. And so I worry less about that in some aspects, but we talk about how we started the show. We've become friends. Janet could be, you know, a psycho killer for all we know, and she could. I met her on the internet.
Right.
Sweet little smile. She's,
you know, that is an amazing miracle, because I feel so connected to you. And those shoes never showed up, did they?
No.
Somebody stole the package. Okay. But you know, you can feel such kinship with people.
Yes.
You can't see a lot in a face. Not that you can't get fooled sometimes, for sure. But you know, this is the new living room. This is what we've got.
Right. Well, it's the walking to school. It's the, we were talking about, like, that's how we gain our social networks.
Right.
And my kids are, oh yeah, I talked to my friend on Zoom. Oh, it is like no big deal. I know people who have, before the pandemic, they're teenagers, oh, we're watching a movie. And I'm like, how are you, your daughter's upstairs, you're letting her boyfriend, no, they're watching it together, but not together.
Exactly.
Yes.
Abstinence, that is absolutely fantastic. But again, too, I think we lose things because, you know, of the social proximity.
Okay, so what have you lost?
Well, if I saw you, well, if we were doing this in Karen's house, I know exactly of like that human touch, the human interaction, I mean, I'm still animated because I'm watching my head.
The actual touching.
Yes.
Yeah. I would hug you.
There would be hugs. There would be, when we come in the room, at the end, you know, as we're leaving, those are the things that I miss terribly.
I do too.
Yeah.
Although I was at the market the other day and I stopped at the deli section to get, I forget what it was, in the morning, and the guy behind the counter, behind the glass, and the mask, and he gave me what I ordered, and then as I started to leave, he went like that, and he said, "That's my hug."
Aww.
I hadn't noticed it right away, but you know, when he said that, it was as satisfying as a hug.
Yeah.
Well, I know at the beginning of the summer, my husband and I were photographing a drive-in concert, and the person who put it together is a very good friend of mine. And I hadn't seen Jim in probably 7-8 months. And so when I saw him, my first reaction, I wanted to go give him a hug. But again, this was in June. Things were very, very bad in this area. And so as I started walking towards him, he put his hands up.
Right.
And at first I felt offended because my brain isn't going. I'm wearing a mask. I know I'm supposed to be safe, but you're my buddy.
Yeah.
And I had to stop and I said, okay, virtual hug.
On the other hand, I would, you know, I used to take my Love Letters Live talk show. First it was, you know, radio station, and then it was podcast, but I still did it in person. I was sitting face to face with people over a microphone. And so that it had to be local. Now, miracle of miracles, I'm not bound by geography.
Right.
No. And I have a wonderful friend. I found a wonderful friend in you, and we've never met in face-to-face.
Right.
We have an affinity for shoes, and you live across the country.
I know. I think that's just wonderful.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, you know, thinking back, like social media has its bonuses and its non-bonuses. When you talk about being in a relationship with somebody, we are constantly in relationships with everybody, whether it's, you know, an instant message, whether it's a writing on somebody's wall. You know, there are friends from high school, so many moons ago, a couple decades ago, that, you know, they'll make comments on my wall, and I'll make comments on theirs. I have highlights into their life through photographs or whatever. And there is a connection there. So, which I think too, it goes and branches off into a lot of things, because, you know, this thing of an emotional affair. It can go into, yeah, I've become very good friends with this person. How can you be friends with somebody you've never met? They're just words on a page, but it's still a conversation. It's still a dialogue.
And it's still heart to heart. You won't necessarily, you know, that sharing.
Right.
Soul does not require, I was kind of surprised. I'm really a very social person. Dinner parties, and I love cooking for, and fancy, you know, and I just love it. I just love it. And I like the more people around, you know, 10 around a table. My husband used to say no more than 6, because then you could just have one conversation. But, you know, I like kind of the razzmatazz of a lot of people interacting. And I, you know, can't do that anymore. And I am surprised to find out that I do fine not seeing people. I do fine just having 2 at a time over to my front porch, where I have chairs far apart, and we have a glass of wine together. I am just fine not seeing a bunch of people. And
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm an extrovert.
Or not seeing them often, although I like knowing they're okay, which is why internet, and I drop a note once in a while, and I'll just sit down and write a letter, which is, by the way, easier than telephoning, I find.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I get their message machine. And by the way, message machines. Okay, I know this isn't about message machines, but there is an emotional problem with them, I think, which is, I'll call a friend and I'll start to leave, you know, hi honey, it's Janet calling, and I miss you a lot, and I just wanted to say how much and as I'm spitting my heart out, I hear this little click.
Beep.
Nobody's listening to my message. They're just, and the worst offense is, I say, oh, you just clicked in, and they say, yeah, who is this?
Oh. Well, the other thing
you don't have that problem.
Well, the other problem I have is people who don't erase their messages. So it's always full.
The box is full.
Okay, Alicia. And then they'll say, you never called me. It's like, how would you know if I called you or not?
Right.
Missed calls.
It's always full.
Right.
And I have one friend in particular who's always angry at me, always, because I haven't called. And now what I've done, every time I've called and it's full, I will send her a text message. And
okay. Well, that puts a lot of extra guilt and effort and irritation on you. A friend of mine once said, the answer to people who say, you know, you haven't called me in so long, she said, no one with a dialing finger can ever be mad at me.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I like that.
Well, I mean, the bottom line is we make time for who we make time for.
Right.
And it is a two-way street. I think the pandemic has shown that. I realized too, one of my best friends who I used to talk to all the time, we're now into sending each other text messages. I think a lot of it too is I would talk to her in my car without my kids because I had 5 minutes of alone time. I don't have 5 minutes of alone time. And so now it's text message. Do I feel like I'm a bad friend? Sometimes I do. And I am a crappy friend a lot of the time. But at the same time, I'm kind of like, is it reciprocal? Because relationships are reciprocal.
Right.
And you can have a monologue.
And by the way, texting has changed. I mean, when I first, okay, so I was, you know, my kids somebody was saying, you know, let's text each other. And my attitude used to be, no, let's just pick up the phone and call like we all, okay, that's kind of off the table because nobody's ever home. But texting used to be for a little short message, right?
Yes.
Now people are using it as email, and they're sending videos and cartoons and great big long political statements. I just blow them off. I'm not going to spend time with that.
Well, but you know, so going back to your letters, because I go back to, because I'm a hopeless romantic, jaded, but still a hopeless romantic. And I love the concept of that World War II, that how people stayed connected. They wrote these wonderful, beautiful letters to one another.
Right.
So I've been, you know, I do write every once in a while, but I used to be email. Then it used to be text messages. And then I think about it and like, how many, is it being really read? Is it really sinking in? Because I'm of the thing of, there's so many other ways to communicate now.
Right.
And so
you can't reread a phone call.
No, you can't.
And as far as texting and emails, you know, somebody pointed out to me, I don't know why it just, that technology changes very often. And what you could access, you know, 10 years ago, you can't.
Right.
Right.
Yet something written down on, you know, good, strong stationery with a nice indelible pen. I have copies of letters that are 112 years old, and they are as easy to read as the day they were written. So I think the best storage system for your emotional side is a letter.
Well, and I think we all have to practice our writing. So I have to tell you, when I sent out, and I only sent out 3 cards for the Jewish holidays. I sent one to Janet, one to Barbara, and one to my wonderful adopted parents who live in Sioux City, Iowa. And I was having trouble writing.
What was hard?
I was putting the wrong letters where I was supposed, like if I was writing,
actual physically writing.
Yeah, as I wrote maybe Dear Janet, it came out something else. I threw 3 cards away because when I do write, I just jot things very quickly.
Yes, me
too.
They're
sticky notes, and I thought, this is terrible.
I'll tell you what I do.
Okay.
If I make a mistake like that, I cross it out and I just write whoops, and then I just start from there.
I should have, but but I kept thinking about, I really want to do this for these 3 people. I didn't care, you know, it's not that I didn't care about other people, but these were the 3 that I felt needed something in my handwriting.
Thank you. Yes, I loved it.
And when I looked at
I won't feel slighted. I'm only your adopted niece and all, but I won't feel slighted.
I'll tell you something. That that's why in workshops that I do, you always, you know, I'm talking about anything written, I guess, a love letter, a friendship letter, an apology. Those are wonderful kind of love letters to write, you know.
Yes,
and,
hate letters.
Pardon?
Hate letters. Those can be very cathartic.
That's separate art, and I'll tell you that. But so it's a perfect combination of planning and passion. And the planning is to do a scratch paper copy first.
Oh, okay.
You know, it's so helpful. And about those hate letters?
Yes.
I wrote one once.
Mm-hmm.
And not everybody deserves a love letter or needs to get a love letter, and you're not obligated. I just say, if you have something positive that you feel, write it down and send it.
Right.
And, you know, gratitude taken to the grave serves no one, right?
True.
So the hate letter I wrote, and it was just a Lulu, I'm telling you. Yes. And I know what happened. It was to a company, and, you know, I had bought a car and everything. Anyway, and it was vile. And I know what happened when the CEO got this letter too.
Mm-hmm.
He read the first 2 lines, thought I was insane, and threw it in the wastebasket.
Yes.
They really don't get read, I don't think.
No.
You're probably correct. Although I did read something the other day from a friend of mine who had a problem with the car dealership. In fact, she was told not to take her car there to be fixed. And it was close to home. She needed something done. So she took it in anyways. And she prefaced when she dropped it off, look, I understand you've had bad reviews. I've been told really not to bring my car here, but I'm going to trust you. Well, when she went to pick it up, nothing had been done, even though the order showed everything was done.
Oh my goodness, that's awful.
So she wrote a letter to the owner of the business and went through it very methodically. And it wasn't a hate letter, but there was a lot of angst in it. He turned around had somebody come pick up her car, leave her another car, got her car fixed. Besides what she wanted fixed, he fixed some other things and didn't charge her.
That's because it wasn't a hate letter.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
It wasn't a hate letter.
Exactly. And so sometimes we have to learn that even though we're upset about something, that, as you've said many times, Janet, it's honey will attract more bees than sweetness than anything else.
True.
Yeah.
But I also think too, the negative feeling, like, because I write and I encourage my patients to write, and it doesn't have to be sent, and it doesn't have to but to get it out on paper and to even read it. Because I think you learn even the negative emotions. Like we've become a society where negative emotions are bad, especially if we are women. We're not everything is supposed to be all sweet sugar and honey. And we're not supposed to have that negative. And I think when you do actually physically write it out, and there is something there is a release.
Sure.
Some of the stuff that I type, I handwrite first before I type it out, because the typing doesn't.
Right, and there's so much to be said about handwriting that would take just weeks. Yes, because what happens to the brain while you're handwriting is really something special. But I want to say that sometimes, I remember one woman in my very first workshop, and we're talking about, we talk for about an hour first, and then we do the practice, and so she growls out, and she said, "Can I write a hate letter?" And I said, "Well, you can, sure, but that's not what this workshop's about." And I said, "Why don't you just come talk to me before you do the writing, and let's see what's going on." And she was so hurt by this friend who had just bailed out on her in life. It wasn't hate she felt, it was love disappointed.
Sure, hurt.
And, she got to that and ended up writing, it turned out this woman had married a very abusive man who wouldn't let her be in touch with any of her friends. And she ended up writing a beautiful, beautiful letter saying how much their friendship meant and how much she missed her and a few other things. And the last sentence we did was, "My door will always be open to you."
How wonderful.
And she felt so much better than had she written a hate letter.
Yeah.
Well, I remember my mother and my father's mother went head to head, and I don't even know what it was about, but it was right about the time that my first niece was born, and we were all getting together as family, but my mother and my grandmother didn't want to be in the same room with each other. So my parents didn't go to this big family thing, and I went with my brother and his wife and their baby, and my grandmother cornered me, and I felt very uncomfortable about it. She wanted to tell me how rotten my mother was and how my mother was keeping her away from, her son. I went home, and I remember writing a letter, and I know it's in this box with all the letters my mother and father kept. And one of these days I'm going to go look for it. But I basically told my grandmother off. Mm-hmm. And I said, "You can't put me against my parents. Right. If you have a problem with my mother, that's between you and my mother.
Good for you.
But I love my mom and I love my dad. So you are not going to see me again until the two of you can shake hands and be friends."
And what happened?
Within 6 months, the two of them huggy, kissy. Now, my mother always felt a grudge. Okay, my mother held grudges. Love my mother for it. In fact, for many years, so did I. But my husband won't allow me to do that anymore. And
okay, good for him and good for you.
Oh, but my mother held the grudge. And so occasionally she would, badmouth my grandmother. Mm-hmm. And I would say the same thing to her. "Don't pit me against my grandmother. She's my father's mother." And my mother would stop right then and there. So, some of those letters can come back and bite us. That letter could have, but luckily it did, pave the way. And one of these days I will find it in there and read it.
I think in general, they really heal so much. One of my love letters live guests of long ago, wonderful woman who was running bullying workshops. You know, this is probably maybe 15 years ago. And suddenly teachers and principals who had always allowed bullying to continue right under their noses were not, and everybody was anti-bully. I think it's because that one family sued the school for not taking a stance and won. And of course, nobody wants that. But I have wanted to start a program where letter writing as part of apologies, that the person who has done the bullying and got caught has to write a letter to the victim.
Yeah.
A letter of apology.
Absolutely.
And I'll tell you, letters of apology, that's a real art form.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's one thing we always talk about, you know, your words and your actions.
Mm-hmm.
But that is your words in actions are in these letters, and the apology, you know, to actually read it. And I think too, with letters, text messages, emails, we no longer have some of those negative voices in our head, but we can still see what some of those letters, what some of those notes, those images are in our brain. But there is something about that. There is this writing this letter, apology that is heartfelt.
Well, let me ask you something.
And it really makes a strong person.
I want on that subject. If kids who bully are kind of as much victims of something as anybody,
Sure.
or they were either bullied or they're feeling so uncomfortable, something is making them do this. So for a kid who's been a bully to be in the position of being in charge of something positive, I think is huge.
Right.
And for somebody who has been mistreated to get a letter that says you did not deserve this, you know, you're a nice, whatever it is, on both sides. I wish people would do it more. That's all.
But I think we have to teach people that it's okay to do this. Okay. You know, my son was bullied when he was in school, and I was lucky enough to be able to sit him down and try to explain who some of these kids were. There was one boy in particular who was always just grating on my son, but his parents were never around. They had a lot of money. Parents were always traveling. The kids were always with some housekeeper or babysitter or aunt or something. And this boy always acted like it was a great thing, you know, that, oh, my parents are out of town. But he was lonely. You could tell he was lonely. You know, I was always around, whether I was working or not. Alex always knew where to find me. But this kid knew that his parents were on the other side of the world.
What happened with this?
It continued until they both graduated high school.
Oh, and no teacher ever stepped in?
No.
That's shocking.
Well, not shocking to me because I still see it happening in the schools.
I know, and it's still shocking. Yeah. Yes.
Oh. I think there is a piece to it. So we talk about the heartfelt apologies in the letter. They have to be felt. Yes. And otherwise it means nothing.
Right. But you can tell.
That's what I was going to say. You can tell in a letter if it's heartfelt or not. And so I've always taught my kids, like, because I was always raised, you know, you apologize.
Yeah.
And I one day asked my dad, well, what if I'm not sorry? And he said, well, you should be. And I was like, okay, well, okay. And then I always say sorry, not sorry. Like, I will always, if I'm really truly not sorry, I'm not apologizing. And I've taught my children that. But I have taught my children of, if you are being treated crappy, that usually it's not about you. And granted, we all do weird, quirky things and can get teased, but it's not about you, it's about that other person.
That's right. People aren't nasty to you. They're not nasty to you, they're nasty for them.
Right, to make themselves feel better. And that is true. I mean, there are some some nasty people in the world and they just don't really care. Right, but it comes from a wounded inside.
Yeah, sure.
So, you know, I guess when I say the hate letter, it's more of like all the negative things, like this is the pain that I'm experiencing. Right. But is it a hate letter to the person, or is it because like you're upset? Like, God forbid an auto place took advantage. Oh, I'll tell you, an auto place did, because I had my Tahoe, and they were giving me the runaround. My car again died.
What is it about car places? Yes.
Well, honestly, cars are not built like they used to. I will tell you that. There's a lot of electronics.
Right.
People get paid what they get paid. They really don't care. And I'm going to say this, but there are a lot of the dealerships still don't want to deal with women.
I think that's true. I think they
it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
So yeah, I took it to a different dealership. They seemed to be able to get it, fixed. And then another sensor blew, and I was just like, I'm done with this. But if you don't know, it's very easy to be taken advantage of.
Oh, absolutely.
And, go ahead.
I was going to say, there's a whole other issue today, not just car places, but companies and corporations. You can't find a human being to talk to. You get a voicemail.
Oh, no.
What? Oh, no. You do. And you get.
Oh, no, I agree with you. Like, hi, like talking to somebody is, you talk
right.
to an animated thing and then you yelling at it. And
yes. I mean, there's one robot I love. It's the Walgreens robot. She's adorable. She's totally helpful. But as a rule, that's right. You don't even get people anymore. You don't get, yes, you get an automated something. And then you say, I want to talk to a person. And they keep going. And you end up saying a person. And you,
zero.
That stopped working ages ago. And so what happens is they say, oh, I understand you want to talk to a representative. Well, I'll need a little bit more information so I get you to the right, and I start screaming person. But they just keep putting you off. And I guess if they're lucky, you'll just hang up and not bother them anymore.
Well, you know what I found is happening? I'll get a phone call, okay, but it is a recording that says, and it always is from my insurance company, we need to talk to you about an issue. Okay, what do you need to talk to me about? So it tells me to call them back.
Okay.
So now I call back and I go through everything that you've been saying, and then I get to somebody and they'll say, well, I've already put in my name. I've already put in my birth date. I've already put in the last 4 of my
700-digit PIN.
But you want me to do it again. And you called me. What did you want? We don't know.
Right.
And so people want to know why we are walking around as angry people, okay? This happened to me twice yesterday. My husband and son came home, and I was running late after your show, okay, because I had to do something else, Janet. And by the time I went downstairs, I was like livid. But I couldn't tell people why I was livid. And my son is asking for one thing for dinner. My husband's saying he doesn't care. I'm starving. I haven't eaten all day. And I just started yelling.
Oh, I don't blame you.
And they looked at me and they said, are you all right? And I yelled back, what do you think? It was because of the things that had transpired.
Yes.
And I'm trying to answer questions that I don't have the answers for, but you called me.
Right. That's really offensive. Yes.
Well, I think,
pardon?
I was going to say, I think what the problem is that because the three of us, as many people out there, we operate with genuineness and authenticity. And people just don't do that. I've instilled with my son, like, you give your word, like your word is your bond. Like, and it has been beaten into his head. And he will even say, like, I can't make that promise to you. Because if I say it, then I have to do it. And I don't know if I can make that commitment.
But, there's another issue with these companies, when you're calling your insurance people or you're calling Comcast. And everybody going with, but the truth of the matter is they have an incredibly huge burden. They are keeping the world's communication going. It's
Right.
huge what they're doing. And the problem is, I believe, that when I was a girl, and I know too many of my sentences start that way. When I was a girl, the world population was 2 billion. And that was pushing it. But we still had, there was clean air and clean water, and there was enough leisure time somehow to take care of people. And now we're topping 8 billion, and there's no way of handling that. There's no way of handling when your insurance company suddenly has, 800,000 clients.
But when, let's say Comcast were to call you, okay, they dial you out, there should be something in their database that tells them why they're dialing your number. Maybe they don't know your name, okay? But now when
they say call back?
Yes, there should be something in the database that says, I'm calling this number because either there's an error in their bill or they need to upgrade something. But when I call and you have no idea why.
Because it's a different person also. It's not the same. It's not a relationship.
Right, but that's a cop-out. That's a cop-out because the home warranty department that I don't have a home warranty or an extended warranty to people, they can go shove it. And yes, if you're watching this, shove it. Because you know what? I don't have an extended warranty. I don't want to renew an extended warranty, yet you know my name is Alicia Minland. Yet Uverse, who I pay my bill every month, and your name, please, you verify this. We want to make sure, are you paying your bill? Well, no, I've already paid my bill, but if someone wants to pay my bill for me, I'm all for it. You want to verify all of this for paying a bill? And then you can't flip the screen? I know. It's lazy.
Yeah, and it's definitely, although, so I drop a note sometimes. I mean, that's a perfectly good time. I just go online and I find out who the head of the, who's the CEO of whatever. But also I have learned that if you tweet them something angry and it's visible to people, they get back to you right away.
Oh, yes, I've heard about that. I don't tweet, though.
Well, I started a long time ago because I was getting this horrible runaround. And I sent a tweet to Comcast. And I got something back right away. And, they just couldn't wait to help. And they were the only thing that works. And that's weird, too.
Well, yeah. So again, too. So, they're calling you. And they have no idea why they're calling you. You're calling them with an issue. You can't get your issue resolved, so you have to go to Twitter, which, yay, I got that correctly because I've been saying a lot of other words that are not appropriate for Twitter. And they'll get right back to you. I have an issue. I'm calling you, and they don't even know who the hell I am. But they know my account is linked to my phone.
Right.
And all I'm asking is like, I'm reporting an outage, and how long is this going to be? But I have to give you my firstborn, my DNA, 6 different times, all for you to be like, so, Mrs. Minland. Well, it's Dr. Minland, and I'm, one of them called me Mrs. Minland 3 times. I hung up. I was like, go call my mother. I'm not Mrs. Minland. Like, and you make me check the damn box all the time. And why are you assuming I'm married?
There is an art to connecting with somebody, when you finally do get a person.
Yes.
And I have had actually good luck often when I finally get to a person. And, the Bank of America once kept me on hold for 6 hours. I was just curious how sadistic they could be. So I just put it on speaker and I went about my work day. And finally 5 o'clock came and it said, the office is now closed. Thank you for being, I left, I canceled my account the next day and took it to a different bank.
Good.
But yes, if you can somehow make some kind of a connection, and I'm such a busybody that I do it naturally. If I hear an accent, which I really like, I find myself saying, where are you from? I hear a lovely, or where are you located? I like knowing that. And, it usually ends up okay. People have to know that you're a human being before they're going to be willing to help you.
Exactly. Well, and that's the art of relationships, which is what we
Okay.
started off with this today, of how are we in this quarantine, how are we meeting new people? It is all about relationships, whether it's, you know, the love of shoes or being a people person, or I don't know, just being, you know, their zany self. You're still making a connection. There's still a relationship.
Right.
At the end of the day, I go on Facebook before I go to bed, because we all know I don't sleep. But so, you know, and I'll go in and just check on Janet's page. I'm like stalking Janet. No, I'm not stalking you, but I just check and I go, because I know she's,
you know, it's like we used to go, I mean, not me, but I guess in my mother's, you know, neighbors would kind of yak over the back fence.
Right.
You know?
Right.
But also, you know, we find things to connect us immediately. You know, we have holidays together. We celebrate the same holidays. I'm familiar with that car show in Birmingham. Yeah, I've been there. All kinds of things that really do connect us. And
Right.
That's important. And that's what we pick up on anywhere. You know, is this person somehow related to me?
Right. Well, and I think too, so, you know, the negative piece to it, like when I was talking about genuineness and authenticity, you know, it bothers, like, why people go, well, they're catfishing. We've also become a little paranoid, but we have to be paranoid, because how genuine, how authentic. Is this person who's bullying? Yes, I can have compassion for them being little mean people, but you're not going to do it to my kid. And you want to bully? Bring it, because I'm not playing. But at the same time, it's like, yes, I can have compassion for that person. Janet is old enough probably to be my mother, but I don't care. She's one of my very dear friends who I
feel the same. I'll tell you what my mother used to say in that business about being compassionate for the difficulty. I mean, she used to say this, and I used to want to just crawl out of the room. She would say to somebody who was behaving in a way that was clear that something was wrong, but they were victimizing her. And she would say, "I'm sorry you have tuberculosis, dear, but don't cough in my face."
I love it.
I love that.
That was horrible.
Well,
but I understand what she was saying.
But it got her message across.
Yes.
You know? And, you know, I happen to have had a mother who was very outspoken. And sometimes my brothers would laugh and say, oh, she didn't know what she meant. But we know she did. Okay. Maybe her words got a little mixed up sometimes. But, you know.
Never did.
But, you know, some of us, you know, believe that we had to be the nice person all the time. So we couldn't say what your mother said or some of the things that my mother said. But I'm now realizing that I can say them, but I don't have to be as direct. Okay. It doesn't have to come out and sound abrasive. Okay.
Because you can be angry or object to something and still be a nice person and come off as one.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Because other people's opinions of myself are none of my business. And treat others as you want to be treated. You know what? I'm a nice person. I believe I'm a nice person. I genuinely go in that direction. But you come at me, I'm not going to sit there and bat my cute, you know, eyes and be like, oh, thank you. Can I have another? No, I'm going to come at you, because that's not okay. That's boundary.
And I think you have to be comfortable with not being such you know, people have sometimes said to me, oh, you're such a nice person. You're always such a nice person. And I say, I'm about 80% of the time nice. And for the other 20, get out of my way. It's not a pretty thing.
Well, and I think most of us, I think most of us are like that. You know, and, you know, I'm sure that 20% of the time you're not always happy with how you're feeling or acting, but you know what? Sure. We have to let it out sometimes. Like
we're human. We are human beings well, I'm a robot, but apparently everybody else is human, and we have an array of emotions. You know what? I will tell you, the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, like, hurt.
Yes.
Absolutely destroyed me.
Yes.
But but what really put the knife in was watching people
Yes.
be disrespectful of the dead.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the opposite. The nice thing is watching people come to her. Oh.
No, I nothing infuriated me more, and I don't write anything political on my page because I'm an independent and I have friends on both the spectrums, and I don't go on my page to moderate other people because I do that for a living. So that's my little freedom. But the anger and hostility over, yes, she was old, yes, she battled cancer, but my God, she really changed a lot and served our country. And how dare you take that away? I don't like John McCain either, may he rest in peace, but he served our country and he gave up his life for our country.
Right.
And the disrespect for it, that hurt me more than anything. Because
did you see the pictures? Did you see the pictures? This just lifted my spirits. I'm going to be happy for a month. Nothing's going to get to me. The NFL football players who showed up on the field with the collar,
Yes.
lace collars.
Yes.
Yes.
LeBron James and I forget they showed. Oh, you know, it's so easy to do the kind thing. It's so much easier to help than it is to hinder.
Well, it's easier to be a friend than an enemy. It truly, it truly to go out and meet people, and however we're doing it, you know, Facebook is a blessing and a curse.
Well, when you get
texting,
you get a request from a friend on Facebook, you guys, and I mean, I did sometimes, and you know, I go look and like no friends, no photographs, but a very cute guy's face, you know, with just a really nice looking, and I know that it is some, you know, serial killer,
right?
Who's put up this guy's
Right.
picture. I mean, you do have to be kind of aware. It doesn't.
Well, and one of the things what I'll do if somebody requests my friendship, okay, I'll see who they're friends with.
Oh, I did that too. Yes.
And if they're not friends with anyone I know, I just don't accept them.
Oh, no, you have to do more than that. You have to call those friends and say, are you legitimately friends with this person? And very often the answer is no, I never heard of them, because when they're, as long as they're, you know, getting into your list, they'll put in your, no, you really have to check.
Ooh,
well, and I think that too is because here's the other thing. What is okay for one of my friends may or may not be okay for me.
Right.
And,
but when you get the answer that, no, I never heard of that person, then why, you know.
Right. Oh, no, that happened to me too. I found somebody in my private message and they wanted friends. And I was like, okay, well, here is somebody is a good friend of mine. And I messaged her and she's like, oh my God, I thought I blocked that person. And I was like, okay. But then I had somebody else who friended me. And I'm not exactly sure, this was years ago, friended me. I thought it was the person said, yeah, this is a very good person. Turns out it really wasn't a good person. And I ended up blocking him.
Yeah, it's a whole new world. It's just a whole new world in that way. That even when Facebook first started, I was friends with this Maasai in Africa. For some reason, he had seen my, you know, because my talk shows or whatever it is, that it's online, you know, it's seen universally. And so we had kind of a nice chatty little relationship. And then it became very clear all of a sudden that what he really was after was a sexual relationship.
Oh, go Janet.
Go all the way to Nairobi, but you know,
yeah.
But you know, you have to be just, but he was honest about it. And I, you know, said goodbye. That was the end of that. But now you just get, oh.
Well, I think here's what's the motivation. Is it because somebody is lonely? Is it because, you know, I am in a lot of private groups on various topics, and I don't accept private messages. One, I don't want to do therapy on my off time, and I will be in that therapy mode. But the other piece to it is the genuineness of people. But I will tell you that whether they're online, whether you've met them in a Zoom, or even you've met them through friends, unfortunately, you just really don't know. Or their online persona is different than who they are. I have a very dear friend of mine that, honest to God, if you looked at his Facebook, I'm not allowed to be Facebook friends with him. Why? Because of the crap he puts on his Facebook, because that's his Facebook persona. And I would be like blowing up his phone, and he'd be very, very angry with me, because I would be like, you are so full of, you know what? See, look, I should just be on Zoom and I can edit my potty mouth completely, because that's his online persona. And you look at mine.
But things have really legitimately changed. You know, when Teresa and I did our first radio show, and our first workshops, and then the radio show. And so one of the things that I would get these emails from people, you know, they'd send a link, and I clicked on one, and it was just pornography. It was just, I don't happen to be a fan of it. I think, you know, the charm is in the doing, not the watching.
Okay, not a voyeur. Good to know.
Now we're here. But, you know, it was not a pretty thing that was there on the screen. I was just horrified. So I mentioned it to Teresa, and she said, you have to check the where it's coming from. Because, and now I know to do that, you know, the from, and it may say Alicia Minlin, but then when you look, it's got a different email address altogether.
Oh, well then, but if I send you good porn, you know it's coming from me.
But it has, by the way, I don't click on anything that doesn't come from an actual, with a note that sounds like it is in the style of my friend. If it doesn't, right. But what I was going to say is, it turned out that one of the things that I would talk about with writing love letters, and it's, you know, we're on kind of hiatus from that now because of, you know, coronavirus. But when you get a letter, it's like feeling the touch of someone's hand over time and distance. Because, you know, you may have put that thing to your lips before you stick it in the mailbox, and there may be tears on it. And it's really like it's like feeling the touch of someone's hand. Well, I guess I had said that on something that I had written online, and the pornography trolls were looking for and felt the touch of your hand. Got me on every Russian pornography site. And that's why they were all writing to me in Russian, by the way, a lot of them.
Well, you know, there's always something new to be learned. So, well, I'm glad that we did this today, because it gave us an opportunity to show people that there's something more that we can do during this pandemic. I know in San Francisco, you're sort of closed in a little bit more than we are here in the Midwest. And hopefully the smoke is not so bad out in San Francisco. Is it getting better? Okay. But as you said earlier, Alicia. Yeah. Sorry about that.
At least call me Blanche.
Yeah. But you said earlier, Alicia, that, you know, you're basically living life like you did pre-pandemic.
A little bit, yeah.
You know, you still go out and see your neighbors, your kids play with the neighborhood kids, but you have an understanding of what's going on in your community. And so that makes you feel comfortable. Some of us don't have that, okay? I live in a great condo development, but nobody really talks to each other unless you're passing each other walking. So I don't know how safe my neighbors are or not. So when I go out walking, I wear a mask. I don't invite anybody into my home. I've had friends who have said, you used to invite us over. Why aren't you inviting us over now? Well, they don't even want to wear a mask. Okay. If they came over, they wouldn't socially distance from me. And I've told them, I'm not comfortable yet.
Yeah.
I'll get there.
I've been very clear on that also. I'm not having people in but I'm having them come to my front porch, which I have chairs and set up. So I'm
you have wine. Wine is important.
The wine. So there are things that we can do. Some of us may choose not to, but you know what? We all have that right to make those choices.
Yeah. Absolutely. And we discover new things about ourselves, and we get to meet.
I have made actual new friends. You know, everybody before on the block where I live, we're busy. We get up in the morning, we go out, we come back, we wave hello. Suddenly people are starting to stop on the street. I mean, I've become good friends with a couple of neighbors that I never even knew existed. Wonderful, wonderful people, my neighbors. I mean, I can't, and look at the two of you. I've got two dear friends
Absolutely.
that I may never see in person. And it doesn't take anything away from the joy in my heart at seeing you here.
Absolutely.
Isn't that weird?
It's all about relationships.
Yes.
And we are in relation to the world, no matter whatever messages we send out, what we receive, what we throw into the universe, what we don't. And no matter what, when you say relationship, it's not about romantic, it's not about friendship. It is in being with one another. And I love getting to see my Aunt Kiki every 2 weeks. And I love on Facebook seeing Melinda and Janet and everybody. And
isn't that nice?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And it's the pandemic, we would have never had this experience.
Right. And it gives kind of a whole new feel to building your own family.
Absolutely. Well, we are going to end this for tonight. We will be back in 2 weeks, Alicia.
Yay!
I can't wait to find out what we're going to talk about then. But in the meantime, I want to wish the both of you Lashana Tova. That means Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
May we all be written in the book of life.
Absolutely. And have an easy fast. And to everybody who's listening, as my tagline always is peace, love, health, and happiness, but especially for everybody in the new year.
Have a great day, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, ladies.
Bye.
This is so much fun.